I'm just too much of a realist to think that we can forever cheat people. So I'm not even going to try to do this. We're going to bring them together, we're going to find the solution, and this will be a fair solution.
Dirk Mudge, major political leader of the white community in Southwest Africa, talking last month about hopes for a peaceful transition to independence in the territory. Ruled by South Africa, it's the reason behind the latest rift between Pretoria and the United Nations. With the independence of Angola approaching, it's on the front line between black and white Africa.
If people from outside would just keep out of it, stop indoctrinating and influencing people to fight for freedom. It's not necessary to fight. I think it can be done in a peaceful way.
Southwest Africa, known as Namibia by the United Nations, has been ruled by South Africa for just over 50 years. With its strategic position, the government in Pretoria would be reluctant to see it fall into militant hands. The country's capital and only large town is Windhoek, one of the few cities in Africa with a white majority, though that's because the Africans who work there live outside the city limits. The city was founded by Germans, the first colonial rulers in the 1880s, and some reminders of their rule remain. This street named after Goering, the father of the Nazi leader. When the Germans were defeated in the First World War, South Africa took control of the territory, but under a League of Nations mandate. It's the United Nations decision to cancel that mandate, which South Africa contests, that's the heart of the dispute over the territory. Last October, African and Asian members of the UN tried to get South Africa expelled for refusing to concede independence to Namibia, though a veto from France, Britain and the United States blocked the move. The US delegate explains his country's action.
Mr. President, some speakers have argued that the best way to bring the government of South Africa to accomplish these objectives, to bring the South African government to heel, is for this Council to recommend that the General Assembly, that South Africa be expelled from membership in the United Nations organization. My government believes that this kind of all or nothing approach would be a major strategic mistake, especially at a time when we are hearing what may be new voices of conciliation out of South Africa. These new voices should be tested.
C'est cette même politique d'apartheid qui, hélas, amène le gouvernement d'Afrique du Sud à marquer une solidarité avec le régime voisin qui lui...
The veto from the Western powers angered the Africans, but kept South Africa a member. Instead, South Africa was ordered to withdraw by the end of May, but when the deadline expired, South Africa was still in control. Once again, the Western powers used their veto, this time to block a resolution banning the sale of arms to South Africa. A representative from the UN's own body for the territory outlines the conditions they want to lay down, including recognition for the Southwest African People's Organization, SWAPO.
I wish to reiterate the position of the Council for Namibia, which I have attempted to make clear in this statement. In summary, as far as the Council for Namibia is concerned, South Africa must do the following. 1, declare its unequivocal acceptance of self-determination and independence for Namibia. 2, accept the territorial integrity of Namibia and prescribe a solution that will retain the unity of the territory as a whole. 3, allow SWAPO total political freedom of movement so as to enable that organization to demonstrate that its support does not merely lie within the Ovambo tribe as is alleged, but that it lies in the whole country. 4, immediately and totally abandon all aspects of the extension of apartheid in Namibia, including its police brutality. 5, implement with integrity and honor the decision to give independence to Namibia, and not grudgingly so, for this could only result in the loss of all the goodwill of the world. 6, accept United Nations role to ensure a fair national elections in that territory. As far as we in the Council for Namibia are concerned, our willingness to resolve the question of Namibia will depend on South Africa's willingness to discuss with us on the basis of the foregoing statements.
Namibia has been a thorn in the side of both the United Nations and of South Africa itself for the past 20 years. The inability of the UN to implement a long series of resolutions demanding independence for Namibia has raised doubts about the world body's effectiveness, while the very existence of those resolutions and the debates leading to them have continued to focus international attention on the South African government and on its controversial policies of apartheid. Nowhere is apartheid more evident in Namibia than in Ovamboland in the extreme north, where the government set up one of its showpiece Bantustans and where much of the African opposition is concentrated. The flag of the Ovambo Bantustan flies over the Legislative Assembly building of the self-governing homeland. Here, the South African governments expended much energy and money in trying to convince the local African people they'd be better off with an autonomous homeland, closely linked to South Africa itself. To do that, of course, they've had to do more than just set up a legislative assembly. Local elections have been held to choose the Ovambo government, though the bulk of the population has boycotted them. Most of the people of Ovamboland still earn their living on the farms and mines in the rest of the country, sending their earnings back to support their families. But the government's also encouraged local development. A radio station's been established. Advice has been given on farming. A major school system has been set up, and for the first time, an effective network of clinics and hospitals has been built. The government's expenditure has succeeded in improving the living standard of the Ovambos, but failed to win over the population to Pretoria's point of view. In Ovamboland, like the rest of Namibia, it's SWAPO, the Southwest African People's Organization, that's spearheading the campaign for independence. A SWAPO leader, Skinny Hulundwa, spells out his party's position.
We demand from South Africa to show us as a gesture of goodwill the following: accepting of our right to self-determination and independence as a unified and unitary state within the framework of UN resolution on Namibia. 2, immediate withdrawal of South African defense and police force. 3, release of political prisoners in order to participate in the constitutional talks. 4, total abolishment of all apartheid laws and legislation so that participants in the constitutional talks may meet under the atmosphere of equality and harmony. 5, lift the notorious Regulation Rr17 and banning order on our acting Vice President, Mr. Nathaniel Mahwerere.
Could you tell us or give us a couple of examples of instances in which you, as you claim, oppression still exists here by the South African government?
Well, all blacks are not allowed to move freely. For that matter, we have to get passes. And these passes, we don't carry them because we want them. It's a sign of oppression. And I cannot go outside the borders of Ovamboland without getting a traveling pass.
Most affected by the pass system are migrant workers, many of whom travel to the centre of the country from Ovamboland. In recent weeks, the government's announced new measures to ease the impact of apartheid in the territory, but there's no sign yet that the workers are satisfied. The support of workers, or at least their acquiescence, is important for the South African administration. But they are the people who provide the backbone of SWAPO's support. When, in 1971, they went on strike for 3 months to protest against labour conditions, they brought the country's economy to a standstill. Conditions have improved a little since the days of the strike. Some laws governing the employment of the migrant workers, which the International Labour Organization compared to slavery, have been abolished and wages have been increased. In the urban centres and the mines, though, there's still room for improvement. Workers can't bring their families with them and they can't form trade unions. Strikes, though they happen, are still illegal. The government may find it has major improvements to make on this front before the economic grievances of workers are removed. And anyway, there's still a desire for political independence. Despite all the pressure for South Africa to leave, major development projects are still underway. This is the Ruacana Dam on the Kunene River, which forms part of the border between northern Namibia and Angola. It's one of a chain of dams in both countries designed to generate hydroelectric power and provide water for irrigating huge areas on both sides of the border. On the Angolan side, the grandiose plans of the Portuguese for attracting white settlers have gone by the board after the collapse of Portuguese colonial rule. But on the Southwest African side, construction works pressing ahead, the waters being used to irrigate large areas of Ovamboland. It's one of the government's ambitious schemes to improve the Bantustan's economy, while the electricity will benefit the whole country. South African spending on the scheme is an indication of its desire to help develop the country, but it's also an investment she might be unwilling to kiss goodbye by granting Namibia complete independence. There are other financial reasons why South Africa might be reluctant to give up control, like here at Oranjemund in the country's southern tip. This barren coast is one of the world's largest sources of diamonds. Namibia's diamonds are buried beneath a blanket of 30 or 40 feet of sand, where they've lain for millions of years since prehistoric seas receded to form the coastline as it is today. Retrieving them is a costly operation, but one which pays handsomely. 14% of the world's diamonds come from here, some 2 million carats a year. A fleet of 350 giant bulldozers and earth movers scrape away what was once the sea bed to reveal bedrock and gravel. Each month, more than 3 million tons of sands move this way until the diamond-rich level can be reached. But there are some jobs that can't be mechanized. When even the most dexterous hydraulic excavators are forced to leave off, human hands are called in for the laborious job of systematically sweeping the bedrock. Here, the nooks and crannies might conceal a fortune in gems. Only 15% of the material recovered goes on for further sifting. Indoors, hawk-eyed inspectors sift gravel from the bedrock. Before it gets to them, it's been broken down into pieces that can be easily handled. Special skills required, because at this stage, the diamonds are hardly recognizable as the sparkling stones destined for sale to jewelers the world over. Just part of a day's production, and just part of Namibia's wealth. For in addition to diamonds, the territory has copper, lead and uranium, as well as huge herds of Karakul sheep, whose wool goes for Persian lamb coats. The United Nations Secretary-General Kurt Waldheim during his visit in 1972. The UN first passed a resolution declaring South Africa had no right to continue administering the country in 1966, but the government, having received the initial mandate from the now defunct League of Nations, was reluctant at first to admit the United Nations had any right to be involved. Later, though, South Africa's position changed, and Waldheim's visit was an attempt to see if any common ground could be found. Despite early hopes, it became clear that South Africa and the UN remained far apart. South Africa continued the implementation of its Bantustan policy. SWAPO continued its political agitation, with a few forays into guerrilla warfare, and the UN continued passing resolutions demanding South Africa's withdrawal. The latest debates have been only a culmination of this long process, and there's still no solution in sight. Though rejecting the UN's ultimatums, the government's recently suggested that all the territory's groups should hold a constitutional conference to plan the country's future. We asked Commissioner General Jenny de Wet to outline a timetable for change.
I think it will be very difficult to set a timetable. You've got peoples with different views there, and I think it will take quite a time before a mutual understanding and a decision can be reached.
Do you think that the majority of people in this country support the South African administration and the way the South Africans are in the country and the way that they're developing the country, and would want the South Africans to remain even if there were to be some sort of United Nations presence here?
I would say that the majority of the citizens of Southwest Africa would prefer that.
The government's belief that most Africans want South Africa to remain isn't always echoed by African spokesmen. SWAPO, inside and outside the territory, demands immediate South African withdrawal and independence as a single, undivided state. It's not only black political leaders who oppose the South African presence, but also religious leaders. The country's most important black church leader is Bishop Awala of the Ovamboland Church. Its members amount to about a third of the country's African population, and both black Anglicans and black Lutherans seem to share his views. We asked him what he and his church wanted to see.
One country, and to stand together and to develop our one country, hands in hands, black and white, as co-countrymen of, how can I say, we have white people here who have no other homeland than Southwest Africa. They belong to us. They have to realize us as their people. Yes, yes, and we realize them as our friends of one country, and we can develop our country together. That is the desire of.
Do you think this can ever be achieved?
Oh yes, it is possible.
But just who represents the African people? The church leaders haven't played a clear political role. the South Africans believe the traditional chiefs, like the rulers of the Ovambo Bantustan, represent true African opinion. But the United Nations supports SWAPO, which, they claim, represents the people. We asked Richard Wood, the country's Anglican bishop, what assessment he'd make of SWAPO's support.
I think SWAPO is the most effective black organisation that this country has. I don't think there's any other single party that measures up to it. It seems to have had the ability through, under great pressure, to throw up quite significant leaders. And now don't forget they're working on about their third line of leaders, you know. You've got your first line are those really overseas, your second line are on Robben Island, and your third line now are the ones who are sort of coming up. And of course, one of the hopes for the future of the country will be to get some of those leaders back into the country. I don't think that you can, that you could hope really to get an articulate black voice until many of those excellent leaders who are overseas do come back and contribute to the future of the country. They're not all SWAPO members, but quite a lot of them are.
Isn't there a marked difference between the approach of SWAPO overseas, which is rather more, obviously, more militant? They can afford perhaps to be more militant, and yes. SWAPO within the country, which is not at all, doesn't appear to be militant at all. In fact, is just the opposite.
Yes, there is. I think that this question of the SWAPO Liberation Army is rather an embarrassment for SWAPO here, because you just can't claim to be supportive of that. If you do, that's subversion, then you're dragged away. So this has been sort of an embarrassment to the local people. But it is an unfortunate fact that quite a lot of the blacks are being forced into the situation where they are seeing violence as their only sort of practical, or one of their only practical activities left. And the slowness of change and the unwillingness to accept the need for radical change is forcing a lot of people to the point where they are turning to violence. Now, I find that very sad, because I believe that there is still the opportunity for political change. But political change itself it means sacrifice. You see, you talk about the protection of minorities. You can't protect minorities. You can't protect the white minority here, because it is the white minority which is the sort of intransigent attitude of the white minority, and its desire to retain the privilege and control forever, which is at the heart of all the trouble. So that, I mean, has got to change, and that means the white lifestyle has got to change. But if you can't protect minorities, you can protect people, I believe. And although the lifestyle of the country must change, I don't think that one necessarily needs to see that as a breakdown of law and order and anarchy and the destruction of everything that is good. I think you're changing the present setup, which is, to my mind, something quite unacceptable from a sort of ethical point of view. You're changing that for something that could be better.
In the past few days, the South African government's decided to deport Bishop Wood, claiming he's been openly supporting subversive organizations. He's the third Anglican bishop to be deported in the past few years. Removing outspoken clerics, however, won't solve the problems the South African government faces from internal opposition, or the international dispute over the country's future. Since the Portuguese coup just over a year ago, the whole map of southern Africa has changed, and with it, the pressure of African nationalism has come even closer to South Africa's borders. The question now is whether the South Africans will be able to convince the world community and the people of Southwest Africa that they're prepared to make major and rapid changes in the country's status. If they can't, then the country could yet become a battleground in the struggle between black and white-ruled Africa.